Logosphere. This is Chris Stites, here as always with JD Roof.
Hello, good evening.
We're here in a rainy evening in Los Angeles area. Grateful for a couple days of rain.
Yeah, we definitely needed this. If this would have come a month or month and a half earlier, all that devastation.
I can't remember the last time that we've been so excited to have rain. Usually
Yeah.
people are a bit annoyed, but we're all very grateful for that. And today we tried to get to this quickly, but it's been coming out so fast that it's hard to keep up. But we wanted to talk about some of the stuff that's been going on in the news cycle with our new president and some of the shots he's firing. And so JD's got a list here.
So basically what we did is we went through ChatGTP and we kind of put like what are the most controversial EOs, executive orders that he's put forth. And also I asked ChatGTP to ask like what's the pros and cons of each of these. Mm-hmm. So we'll just go through it kind of and just a couple laymen talking about politics. I mean, we're more philosophy based, but it's interesting because it's just there's so much news. I almost can't. I don't know if you can relate.
I don't remember anything like this.
It's insane.
His first presidency. I mean, it's common for there to be executive orders, but this is just unprecedented.
It's just insane.
Yeah.
It's like there's so many new things, and again, I think there are some news commentary guys on the left and the right saying this is a blitzkrieg, which a blitzkrieg is what it was a German way of battling. They would just come at you full force with their tanks and their army and try to just punch through.
Lightning war.
Like as fast as possible and with as much strength as possible. And that's a big reason why Hitler was able to take over Europe so fast and just steamroll over,
They didn't have
France,
time to mobilize.
Nobody had time to react. And I think that's also a thing in the Japanese lore too about fighting too, like art of war stuff. Like you go hard, all your strength. And so it's a blitzkrieg is what this is. It's a blitzkrieg of policies.
Yeah, any one of these 10 policies
could take years.
So
it's
potentially scandalous though.
Yeah.
That it could have raised so many alarms from all the potential opponents of these types of policies, but then you can't even get your arms around it before the next one comes out.
Right. So let's start with the first one.
All right, what's first?
All right. Ending birthright citizenship and challenging the 14th Amendment.
So this is if your parents are illegal immigrants and you're born here, doesn't guarantee citizenship.
So Trump signed an executive order attempting to eliminate birthright citizenship for children born in the U.S. to non-citizen parents, directly challenging the 14th Amendment. This move has been met with immediate legal challenges and widespread, I think it was blocked by a couple federal judges already in states, right? This move has been met with immediate legal challenges and widespread public backlash. Critics argue that this order will create a class of stateless individuals and violate constitutional. And so this is what chat said. Ending birthright citizenship and challenging the 14th Amendment. A pro, reducing incentives for illegal immigration, ensures citizenship is based on stronger legal ties. The con is likely unconstitutional, creates a stateless population, and faces immediate legal battles. So what's your thought on that? What do you think?
Well, I mean, I think just this is one aspect of one of the broader areas that's really part and parcel of Trump's whole platform, which is just immigration in general and efforts to try to tighten up and restrict. And I saw a interesting reel or something on social media recently where it was clips of Hillary Clinton and Obama, both from podiums, using the language "people pouring over our borders." And
I saw something similar.
And trying to put forward common sense policies where people who became citizens here had to learn the language within a certain amount of time and have, certain skills to bring to the table. Mm-hmm. And so you had these prominent Democratic candidates who were standing on that platform not that long ago.
Right.
And Trump has been, extremely criticized for some of that language. That language, talk about blitzkrieg, there's that criticism that it's almost akin to the Nazis referring to the Jews as vermin, and this strategy that you see in societies where, at some point people start to get likened to vermin or creatures to dehumanize them, which
to
always
other them in postmodern terms, right? You're othering that person,
and it sort of precedes what could be some sort of genocidal sort of act,
right? Yeah, I mean, so the funny thing, like, I kind of dug into this a little bit, and I don't know if my sources are all, fucking all that shit, like, perfect, but I'll try not to cuss too.
Good luck.
Yeah. But the birthright citizenship, that's a little caveat in the 14th Amendment, which is the civil rights addendum to the Constitution. It was made for slaves, actually. That's where it came from. It was this idea that slave children could get citizenship right away. So it was kind of like, it was done from my understanding of the idea.
Place of civil rights.
It's civil rights, and it was a good thing. But there's a weird hiccup in the language in the Constitution where they changed it before they wrote it down, where it basically, and I don't know we could probably put it up in the edit of what the actual phrase that the legal battle is going to come down to, because it's really going to come down to like a couple sentences, right? It's the status of the person that's giving birth, right? Like, are they trying to become a legal citizen, or are they just illegal and just kind of like hiding out?
Sneak over here and have a kid real quick, and
are
then
they on vacation?
Get it through the infield,
right? Or are they, because you could have people coming on vacation visa or work visa, temporary. They're coming to do some interview or some job, and then they have a kid, and then now that kid automatically is a citizen. And one thing that I saw a lot of people saying, there's this idea of anchor babies, where somebody, like a woman, will come over here and give birth, like come like, a month or two before they're about to pop or whatever, about to give birth, and they'll have the kid. They'll purposely try to have the kid on U.S. soil, because if they do, that kid is endowed with U.S. citizenship immediately.
Mm-hmm. And they're not.
And they're not.
But there's probably still some.
But it's an acre baby, so like I don't think the guy. I don't know if it's the law, but I don't know if the law is just not being enforced. But from my knowledge of it, people don't get like ripped away. So like if somebody does,
they'd be less likely to be.
They're less
deported.
likely to be. Yeah, and it might just open up their pathway to citizenship
more
a lot
easily.
easier.
Yeah.
So, I mean, from Trump, from the horse's mouth, from Trump, he says that no other countries really have policies like this, and this is a very loose policy. And, there are visas that are, they can last a couple years too, and it's still not meant for you to become a citizen, Like there's people that come over here for work, or they're on a special project, or they're filming a movie or whatever it is, and they're not intending to be here long term. They're intending to do their job and then go back to Europe or go back to Africa or wherever they're coming from. So, yeah, it's hard for me to like, I would have to look more into like what the language was in the 14th Amendment. But I think that's what it's going to come down to. It's going to come down to the specific wording of what they actually meant. And you also have to take in the context of when it was written too. It was primarily written for slaves, right? And so then, or ex-slaves, not slaves, but you know what I mean? Like, people that are kind of coming back, they might not have their papers. They just got freed off the plantation or whatever, and they're sharecropping now, so it's like a different type of slavery, because that happened too immediately. It's like, what do you do with all these people that were slaves for a long time? Like, they got to do something, and they would still
do the same work,
kind of same work, and get a different status, but like same bullshit,
Mm-hmm.
They'd still get like, not chattel slavery, but just not treated fairly, right? Mm-hmm. And we all know that that's like been the history of America for a long time. So, yeah, it's a gnarly one. I mean, do you agree with him doing this mass deportation though?
I mean, I do not know enough about immigration laws, but I do,
Well, no, just the fundamental principle of like, you have to have this idea of open borders versus.
I agree with upholding laws that exist.
Right.
And I think that there might be laws that are in effect that are being broken constantly, and nobody is really doing anything about it. And I think that that's a problem, even in smaller systems. I think about like in a family system, if you have certain boundaries, like you tell your daughter, if you do that again, you're going to have to go to your room. And then she does it again,
Right.
but you don't because you don't want to deal with her crying.
Right.
You're going to create a problem.
Right.
And at that
So you're basically a Nazi then.
basically, yeah. Yeah.
Well, no, I mean, the funny thing is I agree with you because, you know, I had an argument with a good friend of ours, you know, a mutual friend of ours about this idea of open borders. And my whole thing is like, go travel then, you know, go see how these other countries, and it's no dig on any other countries, but Mexico isn't the most beautiful country. Or, I mean, you go to, I don't know if you've ever been to Canada, but Canada's I mean, you go to Vancouver, it's like, it's a beautiful city. You know, like any time I've gone to Canada, it's very similar to what like what you would kind of expect with an American city, right? Like there's good order, there's building codes, you know.
It's wealthier per capita.
It's a total way wealthier, high cap rate per person, per household. And so it matches the values and the culture match really well. And it's not to say that the Mexican values don't match with American values.
How about this 51st state stuff?
Oh my God, it's wild. I think that's just a bluff though.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a negotiation tool. I think he just, like, you know, we can just go right into the Gaza thing because this just happened like yesterday where he just all of a sudden said, oh, we're just going to take over Gaza.
Yeah.
And like, that just like.
Or if Israel takes them over, then we're going to basically own it.
We're going to own it and then we're going to bulldoze it and we're going to move all the people off the land.
We're going to develop it.
Well, we're going to take all the munitions off of it, like the old bombs and mines and, you know, whatever's, you know, Hamas was working on because they were doing a lot of weird shit with weird tunnels and all this stuff, you know, so they got to really go in there kind of like Vietnam style, right? There's like tunnels.
Yeah, guerrilla warfare.
Shit. Yeah. So you got to root all that out first. I think what he was suggesting is that Israel's doing all that rooting out because they have been.
It's just such a wild thing to say.
Right.
You know, that no one would even think that you would propose with
Just
everything that's
taking it
been
over.
going on. Just that's one of the biggest third rails in, you know,
Well,
politics
there's
right
been
now.
articles of impeachment put against him today. Or, yeah, yesterday.
Dude.
Because of the guy from the senator or whoever, this politician from Texas. He looks kind of like a weirdo, but he put he's going to bring articles of impeachment for it. He's trying to, at least. And it's because he thinks that as soon as Trump said that with Netanyahu beside him, which, by the way, Netanyahu looked kind of surprised. Like when he said
don't think they prepped him for that?
Did you see the camera view?
I haven't watched the footage.
No. There's this other one where it's a side, and you kind of see like Netanyahu kind of reacts. Like he's like kind of like, what? What are you saying, dude? But I don't know. It could be bullshit. It could just be some bullshit. But this guy, this senator or this congressman from Texas, brought it forward. Articles of impeachment because he's saying that just saying that is like it's there's something where it's like it's calling for genocide
Or even warmongering. It's threatening to take over a foreign area.
right
You know,
but
it's
I mean
like-
is he actually doing that? That's the like he's like of course he's 16 or 17 days in and they're already like threatening impeachment. I mean that's gnarly. And I mean, I don't think the guy's got a case to stand on with that because, you know, it's just rhetoric. It's not like he signed something into policy that's going over the Congress that you can't, you know, like, oh, we're going to go to war now. Okay, drop the bomb over there. Like that hasn't happened, but it's just such a wild idea. I mean, but like, look at what happened with Panama because that just closed a couple of days ago,
What's
right?
that?
So Panama, he was like, oh yeah, we're just going to take it back over. Like we're just going to steamroll it. And then he sent his guy down there and Panama immediately said, okay, China, you're out of here. We're going to treat U.S.
Was that
the
part
same.
of the deal? They said if you're going to let China come in, then we're going to just take it back.
China had some other deal with them. I think they were trying to make another canal actually and like have better access than like American-based companies. And that's just ripped to shreds now. And now the Panama president's like, no. You guys are good. Like we're going to treat you. You guys built this thing. You know, all hail the king, kiss the ring. Like that actually happened. Like there's no, You can argue as much as you want, like how much of a bully is or he isn't, but like that negotiation happened and it worked.
Have you seen some of the stuff with the tariffs that were proposed
Yeah.
and how I saw Justin Trudeau, there was sort of pushed the tariffs back by 30 days based on him agreeing to
send 10,000 troops
to the border for,
and that's primarily for fentanyl.
Yeah.
Making sure, because I wasn't even aware of that, but that fentanyl is coming from Canada. But that actually is a true thing. And the other thing that is interesting about that topic is that there's more people on the terror watch list, because there's these international terror watch lists that have come over from Canada. Because I guess there's something with Canada. Like Canada is like an easier way. It's like easier to get a citizenship for some reason
there than the U.S.
Yeah, like, or it's relatively the same. And there's certain things that they look past that make it, there's a lot of immigrants that go there, and maybe they have but I always thought Canada was super strict though.
We have this idea that it's hard for us to get into Canada compared to Mexico.
Right. But like, have you ever I've had a friend go there and he had a hit and run or something, some type of, like, either I think it's a felony and even misdemeanor. And he tried to just go for like a holiday and they wouldn't let him in. A good friend of mine, like he was caught at the airport.
But it's also sort of more of a stereotypically socialized country.
Yeah, definitely is. And the thing I just don't think Canada really likes America that much. The one thing they wrap their identity around is like, the one thing we're not is Americans. That's what like unites them.
Yeah, there's some point of pride.
Yeah, but
it's the pride of, it's like, we don't even think of you. It's hard to even compare Canada and the United States as far as prominence, but I think that, they do, yeah.
Well, their GDP is like $80 million plus a year, like
Well, so much of it is undeveloped and it's cold and
it's like
sparsely
land.
populated.
Yeah, it's
a
sparsely
massive
populated
country by
but
area.
they have like no population. Like our states beat their entire country in gross, production and whatever it is, whatever industry you point at. I mean, they have some stuff, they have some energy and stuff, but like, I don't know, they're not much. See, the thing that scared me a little bit when I heard the rhetoric of the 25% was the Mexico thing, because we live in Southern California, and I mean, the Mexican community in Southern, it's like they bleed together basically, right? Like, I have a saying that there's no such thing as bad Mexican food. There's only better, or
Yeah, we love our Mexican food here.
Yeah, the Mexican culture is amazing, right? And yeah, when he said that, I was like, oh shit, that's going to affect our pocketbook. Probably.
The tariff.
Yeah, because there's so
that one
much.
Also was postponed.
That was postponed too because of the 10,000 troops. So that was, and from what I hear, the new president of Mexico, that female, I can't remember her name, but I guess she's a big lefty. She's like a big, like lefty, not just like a traditional Democrat, but like a real lefty. So that's interesting.
But she's still acquiesced.
Yeah, so she kind of bent the knee. There is that argument though that Trudeau already proposed a $1.2 billion border thing and all this. All this stuff was already in the works. And he just said, "Oh no, we're going to do it now."
I wonder if it's just like that. Trump really doesn't want to hold them to that, but wants to sound tough. Yeah. And we're like, what could we say? What could we put out there in a press conference to make it sound like the tariff was deferred for a noble reason?
Right.
Like for Trump to say, okay, if you're willing to secure our borders and save our youth and our people from the fentanyl crisis, then I'll be willing to postpone it. And they say that sounds like a good story.
Well, and the funny thing is like it could almost be like a useful fiction, right? Like if, let's say it's all bullshit and he's just like what you're saying, he's just like trying to get a good news article written up about it. But if that causes fentanyl not to come into the country at the levels it has been, and it saves some lives, okay. Like, are you mad at that? You know what I mean? Like, if he's kind of blitzkrieg, he's bluffing a little bit on our two fronts. I don't know. Like, is it that bad of a thing? Because if you get a result where, I mean, we deal in the fentanyl world. I mean, you throw a rock around us and it's somebody that's addicted to fentanyl, or, we've known how many people have you seen die from fentanyl?
Yeah, countless.
It's just like, it's insane. It's so sad. It's such a tragedy. And if there's any result, like just securing the borders a little bit more and making everybody focus on that a little bit more, they're going to catch more stuff. They're going to prevent more stuff from coming over. Is that a bad thing? No, it can't. You know what I mean? Like, you can argue all you want. It's like, far as like, he's a bully, he's a this, but he's getting his way.
What else you got on the list?
Let's jump on. Okay, so eliminating diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI programs. An executive order dismantled DEI programs across all federal agencies and the military, spiking controversy over the government's commitment to diversity and equal opportunity. Like the pro, this is all ChatGPT. The pro cuts bureaucracy and ensures hiring based on merit rather than identity-based initiatives. The con is it reduces efforts to promote workplace diversity, seen as a rollback of civil rights protections.
What do you think?
I mean,
is he able to do it just because he made that executive order?
Yeah, I think so.
Are all those people packing their bags right now and going home? Or
Well, no, they are actually. It's kind of funny. Like, DEI is not what MLK was talking about with civil rights. Like, he was talking about merit.
The content of your character.
The content of your character, not the color of your skin. And like, DEI is a step way past that. And I don't think I went to college and I saw the initiatives that the postmoderns are talking about, and this idea of like this oppressed versus the oppressor. It's always power. It's power dynamics. I mean, we've talked about this on the show. And I think if you try to run your society based on that, it doesn't matter if it's race or if it's gender or if it's, age. You know what I mean? Like, just saying the haves versus the have-nots, there's this ongoing war, and we're all against each other, and certain people have the power and certain people never will, and there's the oppressed versus the oppressor. It's too one-dimensional, and I think DEI is riddled with it. And that's a problem.
Him dismantling it, I think that DEI for a certain portion of the population has become a 4-letter word, that it's really looked down upon, something that's hurtful and corrosive, and it's all virtue signaling, and says it's good.
Is that what you think?
Some people think.
I'm actually curious what your opinion is on this idea of white privilege and.
Well, I mean, like what you said before, to give the devil its due. You talked about slavery in the country, right, and the move away from slavery to right, and if you look at just still the inequities that exist between different populations of people within this country, that are inevitably can be traced back to some of these historical
like redlining.
truths.
Where like even though the black community was like free, quote unquote, they like couldn't get loans, they couldn't get houses, and all sorts of areas all over the country.
So I believe that that's all wrong and unfair. If there's policies that exist that promote that type of
well, what was that? What was the stuff before DEI? It was affirmative action. So that's existed for a long time.
My hunch is that it's counterproductive. That when you go and you try to give someone an advantage because they've been historically disadvantaged, that it ends up weakening them, and that over time actually
so it's
causes.
Like patronizing. It's like. It's infantilizing a little bit, right? And it's also saying
it prevents someone from developing the type of, it's unfortunate if the chips are stacked against you, but if you prevent someone from being able to build the strength necessary, then you weaken them ultimately. And I think what happens is you create like a welfare state, where now you have people that are they're just dependent. And it's an effort to try to help, but it's like a mother who mothers for too long and creates a big baby who can't who can't take care of itself.
So you're saying the marginalized are all big babies? No,
I think that some of these,
that would be an argument back at you, right? That argument, not you, but you know what I mean. Like that could be a counter. Like, don't you really see how disenfranchised and marginalized certain groups are, especially groups like the Black community? They're kind of pushed. They've been pushed aside the entire time.
Yeah,
and there's been no. Like that, I think one of the more fundamental arguments for DEI is that like something like redlining, because like you know what I mean, like that's like more recent. That's not slavery 100 years ago or a couple hundred years ago. That's something that happened, and what happened was when you took a group through racism and gave them the business loans and the housing and the property and the land rights and all that. And you marginalize this other group for years and years and years and years and years, there's this disparity, and it's catastrophic almost to a point where you have these affluent white people, quote unquote, that got all these privileges, and they're generations ahead, not just. Hey, I had a little more money than you.
And it's compounding.
It's compounding. And then you have these like hoods, and you have these we call them ghettos, right? These inner city places that are filled with the marginalized people, whether they're black or brown. And they have it doesn't matter. Like they need the money, because if they don't get the money, it's going to even be worse. Mm-hmm. Like welfare and general relief and all that shit. And it's like the thing. And then there's another argument on top of that. Like the way you would come back at that, it would be like, well, look at other minority groups like Asians. Or even like
blacks from Africa, right?
Yeah, Nigerians, like they're the highest producing. They're successful in every metric.
Yeah, on average, much more successful than white people in this country.
Families, they have, you know what I mean? It's like they're look at the Jews, for example. The Jews are a small population,
historically oppressed.
Historically, I mean, they were gassed. They were this. They were that. They were marginalized like hell, and they're hyper successful people. They just are, right? And then you could say, well, I'm trying to go through a lot of the like kind of postmodern back and forth of this, because I've heard it a lot. Then it would be like something about, well, with certain groups, they didn't experience what like America did to them. You know what I mean? Like there's certain groups that came here maybe later. Right? Or they came, like, I mean, I know the Chinese were marginalized, and a lot of the Asians were marginalized in California. I mean, we had internment camps here.
Yeah. And when they built the railroads, a lot of Chinese workers did, and they were treated like
with dynamite.
animals.
They were just, it was just like, they were treated like dogs.
So when you point out those types of observations, then it, gets kind of dangerous, because it starts to point at, the suggestion that maybe certain people just are
less. They just don't have the ability, and that's like really scary, because that does lead to genocide. That does lead to back to the point we started with, is that there's something wrong with this particular group, and that's scary as hell. Because the thing is, like, when you look at like some of the, and we only have sample sizes of certain individuals that we consider highly successful with, either monetarily or famous or whatever it is, right? Creating high art or making a lot of money or creating businesses. And there's a whole plethora of completely diverse, entrepreneurs. You know what I mean? And another argument back at the postmodernist DEI kind of, wokesters would be like, look at Oprah Winfrey. But then they'd go, well, you're just
the exception that proves the rule.
Right. And they would say you're just kind of cherry picking certain
Barack
people.
Obama.
Yeah, Barack Obama. Right. They would say that. So again, it's like I feel like with DEI, because it comes from philosophical basis, and I think there is some truth in it, but I also think that the overcorrection is probably more damage.
Well, I think it's sort of like,
it's more damaging to society.
It's sort of over meddling and I almost think about communism compared to
social
capitalism.
engineering. Yeah.
When you if you want to try to fix what all the prices of potatoes and
Right.
cotton and steel are, you're just not gonna get it as right as a market that sort of runs all of those calculations.
Yeah, laissez-faire. Like the market selects. The invisible hand too, as well. You have a bunch of self-interested people trying to compete in a free market with rules, but you compete. Who's got the best product? Who can discount this? Who can get the better quality? Who can get the cheapest? Who, you know what I mean? And you have this constant flux of free market capitalism, and that selects prices, and that makes things more fair. And it actually does work in that aspect of capitalism, right? But it's just, it's such a, I think but there is a truth to the idea that people have been heavily marginalized. It's there. It's in the DNA. And like, what needs to be done about that?
It's a great question.
It's a great question, right? And like, a lot of this stuff has been, I mean, if you take it back to like Martin Luther King, right? Like, there's fundamental people that think it's got to be meritocratic. It's based on the content of your character, and are you a value? Can you produce value? It's an Ayn Rand kind of thing. You're either a producer or a looter. Pick your lane. You know what I mean? And you could be a looter and you could turn into a producer.
You're a plus sign or you're a minus sign.
Right. Or you can be a producer and turn into a looter. You can cross. You can jump around if you want. But that's the way you should be oriented towards life, always, no matter what. And it doesn't matter what you look like or who you are, racially or gender or any of that.
If you're a looter, like if you have if you had a pirate and you just gave the pirate money, it might make him less prone to piracy in the future, but it wouldn't change him from being a pirate. It's a problematic analogy.
So you're saying the marginalized people are pirates?
Well, I'm just saying, like, if you're,
we would be canceled. If we had a show, we'd be canceled right now.
I mean, even if for historical reasons you are a minus sign, so the idea would be is you're a minus sign, but it's by no failure of your own. It's because of the circumstances you were born into. And so you're effectively a looter, to use that language. And if you just throw money on that doesn't necessarily change fundamentally that thing.
That perception, right? Even if it's just a perception.
Yeah.
Even if it is somebody's under the boot of somebody else for their entire, they're just totally demolished by one group over another, and they get freedom, like the slavery argument. They still are red line. They still are trash, comparatively speaking to the other society. So it's like two societies, and that would be another postmodern kind of thing. There's this idea that there's one nation and two societies, right? I don't know if you've ever heard that, but that's an Antifa kind of thing. And I can't remember
what are the two societies?
The two societies are like it's the oppressed versus the oppressor.
The haves and the have-nots.
It always comes down to that. Like that's why I think that's actually why I think I don't even think the damage that it does, like the racism that's in DEI by calling a marginalized group not capable, because it is saying that. It's saying, oh, you were so hurt, you can't here's your binky, basically. And that's like complete bullshit, I think. I think, it doesn't matter what race you are or who you are. If you want to go and get it, and like be successful, you can be. You can be. I mean, you might not be a billionaire like Elon Musk, but you'll be successful, right? So that argument's stupid, but it's just I think it's just more dangerous to try to organize a society on oppressed versus oppressor. That's what it is. It's the oppressed versus the oppressor.
I also think it's another example of, like I was saying, that this DEI has become sort of a catchphrase that people that are more right-leaning or whatever, they hear that and they roll their eyes.
Right.
But because of all the things we've been talking about, to actively speak out against DEI it's akin to it's not hard to make the accusation that you're promoting racism and racial inequality, that you're standing up for your privilege by saying, this DEI stuff
is crap.
It's helping. Like I'm sitting on my mountaintop and you're trying to take me down.
You're trying to come up the mountain.
Yeah.
And I don't want you to.
I don't want you coming up the mountain.
Yeah. So
so it's hard to make that argument, even though we do see a lot of the other stuff that there's overreaches and it's maybe more problematic than it is helpful in the long term. But then you have someone like Trump, again, who just comes out and just says, he doesn't say like, he doesn't even offer a caveat like, and I still am here to advocate for all people in the United States, but because he just says like, this DEI bullshit is out.
It's out.
Yeah.
Like, see ya. I mean, I think it, whether it's his personal beliefs or whoever's advising him.
I wonder who's advising him, because there's no way this dude is like coming up with all this stuff.
Well, but you know what the funny thing is like watching have you noticed that the media shifted a little towards him? There's more favorability for him in a weird way. There are people on the mountaintop screaming and going, he's a fucking this. Like, there's still people like the kind of the radical fringe of the Democratic Party. They're on TV like every day saying this is the start of a dictatorship. This is what an authoritarian does. Yada yada yada. But it's not all the Democrats, right? And it's not all the Republicans. For the most part, they're kind of just being quiet and kind of just in lockstep with him, which is interesting to see. And it's really like there's a new media that's emerging, and it has been for a long time, right? There's the fact that me and you can sit across and just talk about this shit and put it online. You know, like he opened that. That's another thing we wanted to go over too. He opened up the press corps to alternative media, like podcasts like this. So like technically, if we wanted to, we could submit an application to try to get into the press, hub for him, like when they do press briefings and stuff, and try to ask him questions.
Yeah.
And he's opening that up. And like, I don't know how you could argue that that's a bad thing, because it's all been legacy. It's all these giant companies that have all this stuff. I heard an argument a couple weeks ago that like a news organization like CBS or NBC has trained professional journalists that are very serious. They have their degrees. They fact check stuff before they put it out.
They're held to certain standards. The
standard is way higher than two bozos on a podcast just talking their mind.
Yeah, we chat GPT'd a few things,
yeah,
and
we're just trying to shoot the shit, right? So I think there's some merit to that argument for sure. But I also think like, don't the regular people that don't want to submit to that, type of news, shouldn't they have a chance to hear from people like us that are just regular Americans?
With DEI and with legacy media, there's just the problem of like the inherent nature of corruption. And so whenever an institution is created, it's inevitably the looters can get in, and they can wield the power of that institution in order to serve their own needs.
Well, that brings me to the next one.
Okay.
So let's move on to this one. Halting federal financial assistance, basically. Loans, grants, financial aid were temporarily frozen. Some of this stuff was actually already overturned, so this is old now. Affected various essential programs and triggered legal battles over the order's reach. So that came to a conclusion. So a lot of that stuff is paused. But the big thing in the news right now that's like, it's the biggest thing I've seen, is the U.S. aid. That's the first thing where Doge went in. Elon Musk.
Doge is what?
Doge is the Department of Government Efficiency, and it's also a meme coin, ironically. And yeah, so they went in and they closed the building down, and they literally just like started doing like forensic accounting. Where's all this money going? What is it paying for? And they found all this like outrageous shit, really, like just millions of dollars, all sorts of weird programs and this and that. Like, I don't know if you've read any of that stuff, but I mean, there's like things like, it's obviously not for what it's for. Like, even though it says like a buzzword like DEI, like, oh, transgender opera in whatever country, it's going to somebody that's like scan. It's not
Someone's skimming off the top.
I mean, maybe. I mean, there was a $25 million grant for Sesame Street in Iraq, which was strange. It's like, and then somebody on the internet got a hold of some of the videos of the Sesame Street with Elmo and like speaking in Arabic. Like, it's out there. Mm-hmm. I don't know if it's real, but it looked real. And you know, the funny thing is about this, there's a lot of people saying that the pushback against Trump going after U.S. aid and finding all this weird payments all over the place that like really like the taxpayers didn't operate, because this is taxpayer money going and funding, you know, and this is on the books, like going and funding to build like a dam that never gets used, or a road that goes to nowhere, you know, or some kind of trans opera or comic book in a foreign country, or, you know, it's like so many weird shit. It's just all over the place, right? And who knows what any of this stuff was for, but it's obviously like, would you have voted for that? I don't know. I think there's a certain population, part of the population, that would vote for some of those initiatives, but I don't think the majority would, right? And so this is this like kind of like, they're saying it's like it works with the CIA, and it's like this kind of, so I'll get into the history a little bit. So John F. Kennedy made it was an executive order that John F. Kennedy started, and it was to kind of softly combat communism around the world, kind of quell communism, to invest in foreign companies and foreign aid for promoting more American laissez-faire capitalism stuff.
Propagandistic,
yeah,
basically.
It's basically like a soft, they call it soft governing, right? And then it was actually made like a real thing by Congress later on. So it is like a real agency, and there are things in it like, you know, battling malaria, and, you know, there is some good in it for sure. And they're from what I hear, they're going to shut the whole thing down though. And there's a lot of pushback on that. There's every big politician that's on the left is screaming about it.
What was the thing too about offering federal employees severance?
Yeah, so that's the thing, and that ends tonight. So by the time this video comes out,
they've had to decide by now if they want to take the deal or not.
And I guess a lot of people have. So there's a lot of people that are like,
so
okay,
they've done the math, and they've
out.
said, we'll save more money if we pay you out for 2 years. And
No, for 8 months.
8 months or whatever.
8 months.
Okay.
Yeah, it's 8 months severance. Go get a public job. Go get a private job. You're not a federal employee anymore, and they're going to save an estimate. I think it's if 5 to 10% of people take that cake, they're going to save like $100 billion or something like that. That's gnarly.
All of these different initiatives, as scandalous as they can be, you know, the proof will be in the pudding, which is, do we have more money in our personal bank accounts, and does our portfolio go up? Well,
that's the thing. The tax proposal thing, he's trying to make
income tax, right?
Yeah, he's trying to make, for at least this round, and this is going to be a congressional thing, so it's going to be voted into law, and it probably will win because there's a majority Republicans, right? So is to instate the Trump tax cuts that he did, and then make it permanent. And so I don't know if you remember, but I remember the Trump tax cuts, and I remember having more money, having a higher wage, and being able to keep more money while he was in office, you know? And then that kind of I think they expire this year, I think, right? So it's going to be technically from his new Treasury Secretary. I was watching an interview yesterday about it. If the Trump tax cut expires and is not put into place, it'll be the largest tax hike in U.S. history. Like, we're all going to get walloped, basically. Mm-hmm. Like, you're going to be like, whoa, you're going to look at your check again and be like, what the fuck happened, you know? So I really like that idea. I can go on a rant about the IRS. I think the IRS and taxing income is technically unconstitutional.
Has he been going after that?
He's
just made some comments.
He's talking about doing like a flat tariff for the entire country. So anybody that wants to do business with us, there'll be some kind of duty charge or tariff. Maybe it won't be like a super crazy high one, but it'll be enough to raise enough money to fund the federal government, because that's all he needs to fund is the federal government. The states can kind of do what they will. So if something like that were to go into place, I mean, the best way I could think about it is that, maybe you have a smaller income tax with the federal government. I mean, the federal government tax is not as bad, like on your paycheck. If you notice, it's all like, well, we live in California, so some people don't have income tax, but yeah, our state, our state, rapes your behind basically. And the federal, it doesn't matter if you're making a small amount of money or a large amount of money. You just get it. You feel it. Everybody feels it. So yeah, that's been a rhetoric that he's been talking about with abolishing an income tax and then just running off tariffs, which I guess the country did under McKinley for a long time. They just had a flat tariff for anybody that wants to do business with America and ship stuff in.
The counter argument is if you create tariffs, then prices will go up. Right. So we'll see eggs, go up even higher, and everything will become more expensive.
You'll be able to keep all your money from income taxes. So what's the, let's say you're going to keep another $5,000 or $10,000 a year, and eggs go up double. Okay. So you're going to spend another $500 on eggs or extra than you did, you're going to be saving so much money by not getting taxed on your total income.
And it could be a policy too, where maybe initially some of these people will ultimately want to do business with the U.S.
Right.
At first they might, adjust prices, but then what happens if we stop buying?
Right.
Then they're going to have to negotiate.
Right. And the other thing is too, is I think the one argument that makes the most sense is that it incentivizes companies to come and do business here, because I've seen this firsthand in the industry I'm in, with paint and hardware and nuts and bolts, and I work for a hardware company, and I've seen the paint industry alone just be decimated. I'm talking about paint manufacturers, people that
because no one wants to manufacture the paint. Yeah, here
nobody wants to mess with all the over regulations and the high taxes for it's this particular chemical is dangerous.
But if you try to outsource it and then make it in another country, then you're going to have to deal with importing it.
Yeah, I mean, most sundries right now that you would go buy at a paint store, whether it's Home Depot or anywhere, it doesn't matter. Sundries are like the stuff that, like the brushes and the stuff that you would use to paint, like the stuff that you'll throw out or you'll use to like paint, like the rollers and cloths, drop cloth, all the stuff that you would use, not the paint itself. Those sections in a store, that's like probably 90% Mexican made now. Like it used to be made in the United States, and there's just been this run away from it because you can get a better deal in Mexico or China. And even the best country, like Craftsman tools, like some of the most iconic American brands that have been around for decades are all made in China now. You see, I remember the change when they did. They're like, yeah, we're gonna like save $1 on each item or 50 cents, and so we're gonna improve our margins by a lot. So we're gonna have our metal, wrenches made in China, and they're not the same as they were when they were made in America. It's just the standard's a little lower. It's not as good, right? So I've seen so many companies over the last, 30 years plus, leave America and not want to manufacture in America because it's just too difficult, and you can make more money if you tap a lab or a manufacturing plant in Mexico and just have it shipped.
Very rare to see anything made in America anymore.
I mean, and the stuff that is made in America is usually like the best stuff. It always is.
It's like it's not even it's like a luxury item.
Right. And it's high. It's very expensive. Mm-hmm. It's super expensive usually. And that's the interesting thing about Trump is like he's kind of changing the game because his car prices have gone down. And most, a lot. I mean, he has some China plants.
I guess that's one thing. Cars. There's still a lot of automobiles, but a lot of those companies have plants in other countries, right?
Yeah,
Mexico,
in Canada and Mexico and all over the place. And the funny thing is like it's so funny that I've always pondered this. Not we, but Henry Ford and the United States created the car. Like you can argue some other dude might have figured something else somewhere up, but like we invented the car. Sorry, rest of the world, but we did. And America invented the car.
Me and you did.
Yeah, me and you did.
Yeah.
And or our fucking ancestors did. No, but like it was created in America, right? Ford Motor Company, and then then you had like Chevrolet, and you had all these competing guys. You had the whole Detroit boom, and you had all the manufacturing going over there, and you go to these other countries, and they like there's no American cars.
It's not true.
No, it's true. Like certain places in Europe and stuff, like places like you would expect an American. You can't get an American car in Iran. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? There's none in China.
Yeah,
none. And that's a huge dude. There's more people there than there is anywhere else. Are there American cars in India? I mean, these are huge places, right? That, that would be consumers of some of Americans, like trucks and stuff that, is useful.
And why aren't there?
Right. Well, because from what I can tell, it's either tariffs, and the companies don't want to mess with it. They don't want to like pay that extra, to get them over there. I think there's it's almost like, I think there's a resentment towards America in the world. Maybe because of all our meddling and stuff, and not really getting it right a lot. But you would just think that like the country that created the car and creates some of the best cars ever
would have cars all around the world.
Like everybody in the mother would want to buy an American car. Maybe they're too expensive for that country to buy, to really make a deal with.
And there's also an argument that the Germans and the Japanese just started doing it better at some point,
right?
And that there was a reputation of American
right, but
cars.
They're not though. You know what I mean?
I think now it's different, but there was a period of time when
I think there was a period of time where
that the quality actually went down here.
Toyota came out and they like put everybody on their back basically. Yeah. But like GM, I mean, there's nothing like driving like a GM Silverado. I'm sorry, like you can, I've driven the Tundra made by Toyota, and there's the Nissan Titan. It doesn't even they don't even come close. Like it's not even it's and it's just and if anything, all those other trucks are doing is trying to copy what's already here. You know what I mean? So it's just interesting to me that like, why is that? Because it's probably also that we just stopped manufacturing them too on that massive a level to export them out to make money, and they're probably too expensive, and it's unfortunate because like there's so many innovators in America. You would think like, no, we keep this thing going. I mean, look at like Detroit is a tragedy, man. A lot of that shit was all offshored to China through government policy. It wasn't like the car manufacturers were doing bad. You know what I mean? Like the country was like booming, and then all of a sudden they're like, oh no, we can get this stuff over here for a lot cheaper. So all you guys, and your town's just going to go to hell in a handbag. And it's like it's I don't know.
Or you could also say that the people who were in charge of those companies decided we want to make more money, so we're going to start playing elsewhere.
Greed definitely. And so, greed definitely played a role in it. Of course. I mean, that is a component of laissez-faire capitalism.
Yeah, you can say, hey, they can just outcompete. They can do it cheaper.
Right.
So they
they do it cheaper by like slave labor and shit, and those those windows where like they make the iPhones where like the windows have nets,
so you can't jump out.
So you can't if you do.
I wonder if that's even true.
I think it is true because like some pretty reputable sources reported on it, but I mean maybe it's not, but like that's crazy if you think about it. And how do you compete with that? You don't. You can't. Right? You have to do an executive order that says we just are not going to do business with you, basically. So. But going back to the U.S. aid thing, man, like the U.S. aid thing, why do you think this is such a big deal? Well, because
the biggest deal of all of these big deals.
Right now, I think it's the biggest deal because it's just shocking. It's shocking. So there was a couple really gnarly ones, right? Like U.S. aid supposedly paid an NGO, a non-government organization, right? But it's getting paid by the U.S. government to fund the Wuhan Institute of Virology. And there's I don't even know if it's a rumor, but there's been a couple of reports that the guy that or the team that was working on the novel coronavirus was working on gain of function. So like trying to gain the function or whatever. How I don't even know what that really means, but I think gain of function is like you're trying to get a virus to gain function on another organism, maybe, or there's something about it, like manipulate the virus in a way where it's more transmissible, or it can go into a different species. You're kind of playing around with this virus that's already around, right? It's a virus that exists, but you're trying to kind of manipulate it, right? For good or bad, whatever. But so basically, in a weird way, this is just saying that we funded the pandemic. We funded, like, I don't even know if China, I wouldn't even think that China did it on purpose or anything like that. I don't think that conspiracy is true, but money was coming from the federal government to fund that lab.
It's strange that we would be even be funding a virology lab in China.
But like, that's the kind of shit that they're finding out, is like, we're paying money because we have so much capital here that we're just paying this money out to just the weirdest shit. It's wild. There was another report that came out today that the U.S. aid paid the NGO that wrote the Steele dossier, the Russia collusion thing. There's also a thing where Politico and some of these left-wing news outlets, they were buying subscriptions for their pro version, their pro subscription, right, to the newspaper for thousands and thousands. Like, it added up to millions, actually. But these multi-$1,000, $10,000, $30,000.
They were paid for by
a year prescriptions.
USAID.
By USAID directly. And isn't it ironic that Politico's stories are all very left-wing bias, and they did the Hunter. They were one of the. I think they were the first news agency that reported that the Hunter laptop was Russian disinformation, and there was some kind of organization of a bunch of ex-CIA and FBI and kind of more Ivy League government official people saying that, yeah, it is. There was 50 of them that signed on, that wrote a letter saying this is all Russian disinformation, and it happened right before the debate between Trump and Biden, when Biden still could see and could walk around and talk. So that was like a direct aid, a direct infusion of money to give Biden. It's kind of an interesting theory to give Biden that talking point where when Trump says, "Hey, what happened with the laptop?" He goes, there was an article that came out with 50 government officials that said this is all bullshit, and it turns out it's not bullshit. It was his laptop, and he's a crackhead, addict like me and you, right? Around. I mean, it's funny when we look at the pictures of the laptop. I mean, how many times have you been there, mm-hmm. right? Like when you're in your disease. Mm-hmm. Like, of course, that's a degenerate drug addict, right,
dude?
Like just the wildest crazy shit.
We lucked out in some respects that our dad wasn't.
Right.
Some dude like that. He's probably like, dude.
Right. Well, the funny thing is like, we didn't have as much filming technology and stuff when I was in it.
Yeah, to capture us.
Yeah, we had regular camcorders and stuff like that when we were really running and mucking.
It was unusual for people to have. They have to have it on them. It's not like your phone; you can just pull it out anytime you want.
And there was you had to roll up the tapes, and you had the batteries, and it was this whole thing. So, but nowadays
got away with a lot.
I mean, he's filming. He's getting all these prostitutes from all over the place, and he's just having a party and just getting dirty, man. And he's the president's son.
But for me, I'm actually kind of like, who cares?
Yeah,
it's the other stuff.
It's the stuff about him getting paid. Yeah, it's him getting paid by the Chinese and the Ukrainians, and then passing that through to his dad and all that.
The other stuff, it's
right.
It's kind of stupid for them too.
But it's funny that U.S. aid was paying direct companies to cover this up. It's basically what it's looking like. And then there is a pushback on the left that I heard that this is all, they're just embellishing these stories. They're saying like, oh, transgender opera, it's really not that big of a deal. It's really not that much money. But it's still happening though. That's the problem, right? There's still this like agency that's spending our tax money on really weird stuff and almost like subverting the government, subverting the leadership.
I think one of the most outlandish ones that I heard that has already gotten forgotten about, it seems like, is just this declaration that there would only be two genders as recognized by the United States government.
Oh yeah, that one, and then
was that an executive order, or was that just?
Let's see, where is it? I have it here. No, the first one he did.
I actually, when I saw that, I saw a video and I'm like, is this AI?
Yeah,
like there's
no. So the first one he did on like day one was banning transgender surgery on minors.
Yeah, which to me
it makes sense, right?
It's still like bold considering the general climate here in this country in the political sphere, but to declare there's only two genders,
right? Declaring two genders. I think that was on day one too. But then he doubled down like today, and he did the no boys can. So here it is. It was today. It was men banned from women's sports.
Yeah,
that's it. And now he's trying to like tell the Olympics when they come to LA, like, you better follow the rules, like that. Like, he's hardcore.
No transgender.
No, your biological sex is the only way you can compete.
And then the military too.
The military, he completely ripped that out. The funny thing is like, I feel like the military one is not going to get a lot of pushback. And the interesting thing about the military, I was in the military, but it's the most egalitarian society I've ever been in. It really is. It's almost like perfect communism, really. You follow your orders from the top. There's a bureaucracy.
Everyone is really equal when you're in that position.
It doesn't matter.
Once you're in the barracks and you're in the front lines or whatever.
It's completely merit based too.
No one cares anymore.
Yeah, it doesn't matter what your color, your skin is. It's all about ability, and if you can get it done, you're going to get promoted faster. That's it. That's all it is. It's straightforward. There is some bureaucracy to it, but it probably is the most meritocracy, egalitarian society I've ever been a part of.
What's the argument? Did you have that down there as far as pro con?
Oh, let's see. The gender affirming care for minors, we had that one. No, I didn't have the military one because I didn't think it was that big of a deal because the military is already merit based and they're just trying to infuse this.
But are there transgendered people in the military now?
Well,
have they just been
when I served, there was
released?
When I don't know what's going to happen there. I think they're going to like release them, and they might.
What do you think the argument for prohibiting transgendered people from serving in the military is?
The argument that he's stating, and that the guy who's in charge of it now, the Fox News guy that got the job. He's in charge of the Pentagon now, is that they're mentally unfit to serve.
Because it's...
Well, because gender dysphoria is a pretty severe mental illness. And the military screens for other health, mental health problems as well.
That's kind of a weird catch-22 because if you're transgendered, you want to say gender dysphoria is a real thing to legitimize your situation.
Right.
But then they come back at you and say, well, if it's a real thing, that type of thing excludes people from the military.
Right.
It's actually not about your argument about you being a man
or a woman. It's saying that this is a mental health issue, which makes you unfit for duty. I mean, I got honorably discharged on a medical separation because I came down with type 1 diabetes, right? And they said, okay, well, you're a master at arms, so you're supposed to be a cop. And now you're unfit because you have to have you have to shoot up insulin 6 times a day and you could pass out on duty. It said this in my paperwork. Like this was the conclusion. They call it like a medical review board. You could make the rest of your fellow soldiers vulnerable. So we can't have you in the military anymore. You're unfit for duty. That's what they said. I'm unfit for duty. And so I was medically separated. And, that's what they're saying about transgenderism, basically. Now, that's what they're saying. They're saying you're unfit for duty. You're not mentally capable of doing this, And there'd be an argument that there's a lot of like I think there was like a transgender SEAL that was really gnarly, that was was a man, and then I think when they got out, they went full transition to a female. So like, are you excluding people like that? Somebody that actually could be the best of the best, but then, I don't know. I think it's a good thing. I think everybody in the military needs to be of sound mind and body. You can't have chronic depression. You can't have type 1 diabetes. I think you shouldn't have type 2 diabetes. You shouldn't have any medical or mental health problems going in. Like, you should have a clean bill of health is what they would say. Because what happens if you do, right? If you have a bunch of depressed people fighting, what's that going to do when they see their buddy's leg blow off? You know what I mean? It's kind of smart using that route, that of argument, right?
It is.
And I can see how it marginalizes people that have the dysphoria and are trans, but
it's when you say there's not going to be
what's
much
the
of
benefit reward?
There's so much room for backlash there, but I think it goes back to the blitzkrieg thing, which is
it's just too much.
Yeah,
people
are just
it's too
dazed.
fast.
So it's going to be interesting to see in the coming weeks. Still here. Is there? I wonder if this executive order sort of phase of the administration is going to, if there's a plan for it to expire at some point.
Dude, I heard a thing that Trump is asking every day, how many more days do I have left already
in his presidency?
That's his mind frame. So I don't think it's going to stop. I think it's just going to be a blitzkrieg the entire time he's here, because there's this idea that when you don't have a second term that's possible, and this is, a lot of administrations get really. Remember, Obama did this. I mean, all presidents have done this, but their last 4 years they go out hard, because
it helps that you don't have to spend 2 of those years planning for re-election.
Right. You don't have to do that, and it's like hell's bells, basically. Like, I'm not really.
You have to pander to anyone.
No. There's not. You don't have to get donations. You don't have to do that. You just can implement whatever policies
you're about
you think
to get.
Are right.
Secret Service
for the rest of your life,
and
you have immunity to a lot of things. All the presidential acts he makes, he's got immunity to. Not civil and stuff. Like if he does some weird shit, but
shoot someone in New York City, like he
said.
Right.
Yeah, but he can't. He's got immunity though, so it's like you have immunity, and then you also have the pardons. Because that's another thing that we didn't talk about. But the pardons,
are such a strange tradition.
Do you think they should be abolished?
Yeah, it seems
right.
It seems
like a no-brainer.
It seems like outdated.
It's too kingly. It's like you're a king.
Yeah.
Right. It's like it's equating you to God. If you think about that, right?
I'm just gonna assume this privilege to override the rule, like the rule of law. Mm. But
it's like a king
pardon. You're pardoned.
I think it comes from, actually, like if you look it up, it's an old idea that comes from monarchies and single rulers.
Well, in that case, I kind of like it.
Right? So like the king can do whatever he wants. Yeah. That's kind of the idea, right? Like he can go and send some fringe general out to some peaceful population and massacre everybody, and everybody's abhorred by this guy,
and pardon him,
and just be like, you're pardoned, and nobody can fuck with him now. You know what I mean? So I don't know. It is an interesting argument. Like, should we get rid of pardons or not? I don't know. What do you think we should? Now thinking about it.
Well, I mean, I just the part of me that likes the that it's an import from a historical time.
Yeah.
I like the tradition that exists there, but it tickles part of me that's probably not of the soundest mind.
Well, do you think there is one idea that like it could be limited, so it's not
what's an argument for them being able to pardon anybody?
It's just like if something had to get done, right? That maybe,
but leave it up to the system to
I don't know.
decide.
I wouldn't know. Like, what's the argument for it? It's just because you're the president.
Yeah, so they just get like a
get out of jail free card for whoever they want. Because like I think Biden like grossly abused it.
Yeah, I heard it was
his way out.
Second most compared to some.
No, I think it's the most actually.
Oh,
yeah.
I think that I heard that someone pardoned all like draft dodgers during Vietnam.
Oh yeah,
and technically
but like,
that was the most.
but that's that. Yeah,
It's
who cares?
different
That's different. Like it's like okay, big deal. That's a slap on the wrist, anyways, right? That's a fine. Maybe you have to do some jail time or something. You know what I mean? It's not like your life's going to be ruined for that, and But that was more of a symbol pardon, like symbolic, right? But these pardons he did were like specific people for like what? That's the thing that's so weird. Like he pardoned like Chuck Schumer and like some of these prominent Democrats.
To pardon anybody,
right? Like, I mean, it's okay to pardon somebody. Like, if you're gonna pardon like Edward Snowden, we know what he did, right? Like he leaked secrets, classified information, and put people's lives at jeopardy.
Was he pardoned?
No, he hasn't been pardoned yet. But I'm just saying, like, if a guy like that were to be pardoned, you're like, oh, okay, he's because on the flip side of it, with the Snowden argument, like he did do that, but they also like changed policy because they were abusing the whatever that act was, the spying act on American citizens. So they were doing something wrong, but the way he went about it was wrong. So like there's two wrongs. So if you pardoned him, you could understand that, right? Like, okay, that guy might deserve a pardon, right? As long as he makes a commitment that he'll never do some stupid shit.
But when
like
there's
that
all
again.
these people we don't even know what they did, you go, why are you pardoning them?
Right. But the argument from the Biden side, from what I could estimate or what I've heard, and I think this came from his like his pressers and stuff, was that just in case Trump decides to weaponize the DOJ against these particular people, I just want to like give them. I want to protect them. So that's his argument for that. Like, just in case Trump decides to go, full dictator, they get a pass. You can't fuck with them. And it's like open-ended kind of. It's like, but it doesn't matter. So like, how if we find out like Chuck Schumer murdered a bunch of children? You know what I mean? Like,
in the pardons, do they have to be specific?
I think they are specific, actually.
Yeah.
I actually think that doesn't count, right? Like if he murdered somebody and they had conclusive evidence, like he'd be done.
I wonder what the limits on it are.
But I think there are limits, but like it's still like very shady.
It's bizarre.
It's very bizarre.
Yeah.
So we'll get back to doing another one on some of the new stuff, and I think we're going to lean into the dark arts, the political arts, and we'll read up about it more too, because we're not as well read in the political sphere, and we'll come back with some more.
Yeah, we'll see you next time.
All right.
Bye.
Good night.